Yeah, good. Hello, I'm Vritant. He's Anand and he's Tarun. I call him Tarun because that's the topic of our debate. It just so happened when I studied my master's in a university outside India, I used to call my professor sir a lot. And I was actually checking emails, and there was a lot of sirs in the email, which is very cringe-worthy. And at some point, my professor stopped me and said, "This is not what we do here. Either call me Matthew or call me Dr. Wright." I told him, "I'm not comfortable with Matthew, I'll call you Dr. Wright." Till this day, that's all I can call him. In our orientation in ISB, in the PGPPro program, we were told that you should call your professors by your first name. Nobody else does in my class. It's only me all the time, and it's kind of an awkward setting, and it's confusing at the very least as to what we should call the professor. Do we call you professor? Do we call you Tarun? So what do we call you?
Okay, so glad to have this discussion. It's a unique discussion that I've never had with students before. So I'm glad that you raised this topic. You can call me whatever you like, right? Whatever makes you comfortable.
Depends on the grade that you give us.
Not at all, not at all. So I think the important thing to keep in mind is that in the MBA classroom, what's important is that the professor and the students are in a discussion. We're trying to learn some things together.
Sure.
Right? Our topic of the day is economics, so that's why I'm there. But ultimately, I'm not a sage who has some great information, right? I'm just a person like you who has spent more time studying economics, and I want to share that knowledge with you. And we're going to share that by having a discussion. So it's really what I think of as a non-hierarchical relationship. And it's very important for the business school classroom, for the MBA classroom, to be non-hierarchical. We should all understand that all of us have some expertise, and we should feel free to share it. And so whatever makes us comfortable sharing knowledge, helps us to get to a better place, that's fine with me.
So Anand, do you think calling somebody professor, it kind of implies a hierarchical relationship? What do you think about that?
I don't quite think it means any hierarchical relationship, but basically my perspective on the matter is, again, I would tend to agree with Professor, that it's a personal preference of an individual and also what the professor would want us to call them to. But at the end of the day, my only idea is that it shouldn't be forced. Any other shouldn't be forced, is the idea. And for me, I mean, think of the campus that we have here. Right? So ISB has invested so much in building this campus. When we come here, there's a certain feeling that we get, a setting where we feel comfortable to learn. Like even the LRC or even the classroom, it's built in a certain way to induce certain mindset. Whether it is to facilitate better learning or whether it is to facilitate better concentration, sure. But I would think even the idea of calling a professor is also one of those elements to me.
Sure.
And I think it would kind of set the tone. Whereas, I mean, you have been in the classroom where, you're trying to make an announcement and a lot of people are not listening to us when we're at the front, but if it was a professor and if somebody had announced that we have a professor, there's a sense of acceptance and there's a sense of being attentive. And that's where my thought comes to. And I think if we get to the point where we're all being colloquial and we start calling our professors with first name basis, we might lose some of it, is my concern.
Okay. I'm glad you mentioned being forced, right? And you also mentioned inducing a culture.
Right.
And there is a fine line to it.
Right.
I happen to disagree with you in terms of where that line should be drawn, apparently.
Right.
But here's my thought, right? We've grown up in a culture, especially I think in this Indian context, I think it's safe to say that we've grown up with a culture where the teachers should be respected,
Right.
and should not be questioned,
Yeah.
right? So in a way, if we were in a culture like ours to come out of that and remove the hierarchy there, isn't that kind of a push or even force, if you may call it so, necessary?
So I have a view on that, if I may share that.
Sure.
Right? I mean, so you respect the classroom, right? When you think about what is being taught and you come prepared to the classroom, right? I think that is like really important way to show respect to your classmates and to even the professor. Another way to show respect is to listen to other people.
Right.
Right? And that's also, I think, an important trait. When we pay active listening, we show respect for the other person's viewpoint.
Sure. So there you go. So I've been calling my teachers sir and ma'am all of my school life. Uh, it's safe to say I didn't respect every teacher that I studied under in school. So I guess, is there really an association between what we call them and respect?
Sure, I think actually that's a brilliant point, and so I don't think either of them is an indication of each other. When you call somebody with a title, it doesn't mean that there is an inherent respect. And also, when you respect somebody, it doesn't mean that you have to inherently call them with a title too. I think that goes without saying. For sure, I agree with you on the point. So to go back to the idea of kind of developing that environment where we can refer to our professors on first-name basis, I think if there was to be a bit more interaction between the professors and the students, and maybe even social gatherings too, eventually you might all get into the space we could get to that level. And also, because of that, there might be even better learning too. I mean, as the professor is saying, like if you can come to the point of being able to respect each other, just as even individuals do, and also maybe even subject matter experts, I think we might be able to learn better from each other. But in absence of it, like especially with working professionals, we may not have enough time. Like we have 24 courses in our program. When you don't have enough time to be able to spend that time with almost every professor that we get, there has to be some other measures that might be able to induce some of it.
Sure.
If you will.
Absolutely.
So I think, but again, if we could all probably had a boot camp or maybe a month or two on the campus where we get to that place, we might be comfortable with it. So.
I actually have my own suspicions about that. So I was writing email to my graduate professor, and I established a relationship with him early on, right? I call him Dr. Wright, and that's who he is to me. I spent years calling people by their first name, but still, in that email, I was stuck on what to call him because I was talking to him about this discussion that we're having right now, and I ended up sending the email with Dr. Wright. What I'm saying is, it's imbibed in us, right?
Sure.
So imagine all of us, many of us in ISB come from education in India, right? So imagine coming on and being in orientation, being emphasized that no, you call them by the first name. I think that would set us apart, ISB's environment. It is different.
Right.
At least that's what we all believe. I think we're in agreement there, right? Wouldn't that set a tone here and saying that, okay, no, I'm in a different place. What I'm here for is different.
Right.
And irrespective of what I came here for, what I'm going to take out from ISB is a lot more different than what I thought it would be. Don't you think so?
Sure. So I'll just take you up on the point of what you mentioned, the culture that we are brought up in. There are a lot of studies in psychology, human behavior especially. When you take any person out of their natural habitat, natural environment, they cannot behave naturally anymore.
Sure.
And so for you are used to actually calling professors by their first name. If I were to come and force the idea of calling them by professor, maybe you won't feel comfortable with that.
Absolutely.
As equally, if we can force the idea of calling them by first name, a lot of the other people may not feel comfortable with it too.
Sure.
At the end of the day. So it might defeat the purpose of even what they're here for. Like the moment if they're uncomfortable, I think they may not even learn as much as they're here to learn. And I think, sorry, I don't think I completely agree with you at the end of the day, but I think the common theme that I hear from what Professor is saying, that he would be comfortable with whatever we want to call him, and I would go with the same idea too. I think we could call him with whatever we're comfortable with, but I do like the idea of being able to call them by first name. I sincerely do, because at work that's what I do.
Yeah.
With all of my superiors, even including my CEO. And all the 5-6 years that I spent in US, every person that I worked with, every person that I reported to, I called them with first name basis. In fact, when we had a professor from US visit, I felt really uncomfortable calling him professor, because culturally, from that culture, I know we call them by first name, and all I could think of was first name, but I had to make sure I was being consistent to all the professors. So I was forcing myself to be professor, and I remember the discomfort at the time. So I think there was the point.
Tarun, looking back, did you ever face this challenge yourself? You studied outside when you studied.
Yeah.
Was that a challenge for you at all?
So I think the challenge happened when I was talking to professors who were much older, right? When it was talking to younger professors, I learned to quickly call them either by the first name, right? But one thing I stopped doing when I moved from India as a student, as a school student to a college student in the US, is calling professors sir.
Right.
Right? And so, as I mentioned earlier, that's you're called sir something when you receive a knighthood from the Queen of England or the King of England.
Sure.
And none of us have received knighthoods yet.
Right.
Right? So perhaps it's an unearned title. You might even call it a colonial relic.
Right.
So I would drop the sirs.
Yeah.
And if you feel like being a little bit more formal, call professors professor, right? Or professor plus their last name. And those are earned titles.
Mhm.
We all worked hard for our professorships.
Mhm.
And so that's absolutely fine as well. So
Would you prefer that?
do what you like, right? As I said, do what you like, whatever makes you comfortable, and hopefully, if students are comfortable, it will be the basis of a good discussion.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think that's my view on the matter.
And I think that summarizes very well. Do
Yeah.
what you like.
Yeah.
Thank you for listening.
Great. Thank you, guys.